Whether it's jump scares, shocking reveals, dramatic crafting of a sense of overwhelming dread, or just a particularly gory and garish sequence, horror revels in freaking us all out. Here, our focus is on those certain moments, certain pieces of imagery, and certain shots that left audiences doused in a cold sweat of discomfort, and those moments that never fail to creep us out, even on repeat viewings. So, with that in mind, I'm Andrew from What Culture Horror, and here are horror movie shots that will send a chill down your spine. The Head Turns, Hell House LLC. Found footage offering Hell House LLC takes place in the aftermath of a tragedy at a haunted house attraction in Aberdeen, New York. An opening night, 15 customers and all but one member of staff died in mysterious circumstances. As ever the case in the horror genre, some budding filmmakers decide to delve into this catastrophe and attempt to discover what really happened on that fateful night. Assisting them in their documentary, our film crew have managed to track down the one surviving staff member from this attraction, and she just so happens to have footage of how the haunted house itself came to be put together. Hell House LLC is full of plenty of proper good scares, but the most unnerving moment of the picture revolves around footage where two staff members find themselves in the basement of the old creepy hotel that's being used for this haunted house. There we see three creepy as flub mannequin clowns. But they're mannequins, right? Just good old non-moving, non-real, non-evil mannequins. In a brilliant, disturbing shot though, when our two staffers turned around to have one last look at these mannequins, the trio of Harlequins' heads have all eerily tilted to be looking directly at our now terrified protagonists. No thank you. Henry's gonna Henry. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. As the movie's title alludes to, Michael Ruckus Henry, loosely based on real-life serial killer Henry Lee Lucas, is a deranged figure who gets his kicks by killing any man, woman, or child he so wishes. And not just that, but our central rogue is joined by his pal Otis as the film plays out, the pair carrying out all kinds of unspeakable atrocities. Surprisingly, Henry eventually shows a softer, almost redemptive side towards the film's close. So much so, he ends up butchering his best friend after he finds Otis sexually assaulting his own sister, that being Becky. With that, Otis's body is dumped, Henry and Becky ride off into the sunset, and all look somehow well with the world. Still, after Henry and Becky take up an overnight stay at a local motel, complete with seemingly becoming a loving couple, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer has a soul-crushing final shot. Just as we think that Henry has changed his ways, we see him dispose of a bloodied suitcase which supposedly contains the dead body of poor Becky. Michael stalks Annie, Halloween 2, 2009. Unlike Nancy Loomis's iteration of the character in John Carpenter's Halloween, Danielle Harris's take on Annie Brackett actually managed to survive Rob Zombie's first Halloween film. Despite surviving Michael Myers' initial onslaught on Haddonfield though, the Shape would hunt Annie down and finish the job in Halloween 2. Having dispatched the police officers guarding the Brackett home, Myers, unbeknownst to Annie, makes his way inside the family abode. It's here where there's a truly eerie shot as Michael stands behind the clueless Annie while she brushes her teeth. The whole sequence has an uneasy, unnerving nature to it, from the moment we see Michael outside the Brackett house and then as we realise what's about to happen, all while Annie has zero idea of the brutality that awaits her. While the death of Annie isn't shown in a linear way here, Zombie instead chillingly intercuts footage of the death of Annie with moments where Laurie Strode is shown checking on her best friend. All bloody, all traumatic, and a shockingly visceral demise, even by Rob Zombie standards. The Upside Down, Hell is Where the Home Is. In Orson Oblovitz's Hell is Where the Home Is, the focus is on two couples who hire a luxury house for a weekend of fun. Once Fairuza Balk comes a knocking on their door, positioning herself as a neighbour who needs to borrow a phone due to car trouble, the reputation of Balk has you thinking she has sinister intentions. With our central characters likewise presuming the worst from Fairuza, hey, maybe they'd seen her maniacal ways in the craft. It turns out she really is just a neighbour who has a knackered car. Unfortunately, Unfortunately, we only find this out after she fatally, accidentally, has a wedge of glass rammed through her eye. By this point though, our protagonists have already called the cops due to their belief that Fairuza Balk's unnamed character is a wrong'un. But what lies ahead is a reveal that one of the local cops is actually after some dodgy pictures that are somewhere in this house. In a truly unique shot, and to show that this cop and his cohorts mean business, viewers are treated to an immense upside down visual after one of the non-corrupt cops has a machete wedged in his head. From there, this cop falls backwards as the camera perspective flips to represent the viewpoint of this poor fella. It's a brilliant shot, but also one that's extremely grim. Man in the Mask watches on. The Strangers. In the case of Brian Patino's The Strangers, it's Kristen and James who find themselves as the unlucky couple in the crosshairs of Man in the Mask, Dollface, and Pinup Girl. Specifically, these on-the-rocks lovebirds are at James's family summer house when they hear an ominous, initially gentle rapping at their front door. The first knock is merely just someone at the wrong house looking for the wrong person, though of course it would soon become apparent that this visitor is indeed one of the film's trio of killers. By the time we realise what's happening, James has left the house in order to buy some cigarettes, and it's here where The Strangers delivers its most unsettling shot. As the unaware Kristen tries to ring James, the audience slowly spots the presence of Man in the Mask lurking quietly in the shadows. With that, The Strangers fully sets its stall out, and Horror Hounds knew that it was gonna be a long all night for Kristen and James. The Bullet Wound, the Amityville Horror 2005. 2005's redo of the Amityville Horror is largely your run-of-the-mill remake, likely most remembered for a shredded Ryan Reynolds catching the eye as an often shirtless George Lutz. Of course, the Amityville Horror revolves around the Lutz family moving into a new home in Amityville, New York. The kicker? It's that the property was going cheap due to a gnarly set of murders having taken place there 1 year earlier. Those murders were carried out by Ronald DeFeo Jr., who slaughtered his family after supposedly being commanded to do so by a sinister presence in the house. When a slew of spooky happenings start to terrorise the Lutz family, the big question is whether Ryan Reynolds' George will follow in the murderous footsteps of DeFeo. As part of these spooky happenings, young Chelsea Lutz claims to have been visited by a pal named Jody. Eerily, Jody is also the name of the youngest child killed by Ronald DeFeo Jr. And when babysitter Lisa mocks the Lutz kids for Jody, she finds herself trapped in the closet with the one and the same spirit she was poking fun at. In a disgusting sequence, Jody, who was fatally shot in the head, forces Lisa to put her finger in the bullet wound on her head, complete with stomach-churning, squelching sound effects. Yeah. Nobody puts Mike in the corner. The Blair Witch Project. The Blair Witch Project showcased a rather unfortunate foray into the woods of Burkittsville for student filmmakers Heather, Mike, and Josh. On the hunt to find the Blair Witch, or Rustin Parr, a vagrant who'd murdered 7 children in those woods, our trio of budding Scorseses end up biting off far more than they could chew. With Josh having vanished, his 2 pals go in search of him, all after having found a severed tongue, teeth, blood-stained clothes, and generally being tormented by something unseen but sinister. Of course, by this point it's been established that Rustin Parr also killed his victims in pairs, with one forced to stand in the corner of the room. So, when Heather and Mike rush to what they believe is Josh's screams, they end up in the basement of Parr's old house. From his perspective, we see Mike drop to the floor after being attacked by something, and then Heather arrives shortly after to find Mike standing in the corner before she too is also attacked. The sight of Mike here truly is an eerie one, with Heather and the audience made well aware what the implications of this fully are. That nurse scene, The Exorcist 3. The phenomenal Exorcist 3 follows George C. Scott's Lieutenant Kinderman as he dives into a slew of devilish murders that all have the trademarks of the Gemini Killer. Essentially the film's spin on the famed Zodiac Killer. The catch with Gemini is that he's actually been dead for 15 years. For poor Father Karras of the original Exorcist movie, he's back here as a catatonic patient who's possessed by Gemini, and also an ominous presence known as the Master, all while Karras is mocked for what happened to young Reagan McNeil in that first Exorcist film. So, that nurse scene then. This comes during the second half of The Exorcist 3 as we watch a nurse investigate a noise from a nearby room. Here we get a fake jump scare at the reveal of a startled sleeping doctor, then masterfully, just as we and the nurse start to relax, a chilling nun figure exits another room immediately behind our nurse with shears pointed at the nurse's head, as a scene cuts to a shot of a decapitated statue. This is such a brief moment, but genuinely one of the most jarring scenes in horror history. Ben Gardner says hello, Jaws. In the case of Steven Spielberg's iconic Jaws, the one moment guaranteed to put a shiver through your soul is the discovery of Ben Gardner's corpse. Granted, Jaws has plentiful scenes of terror, not least the brutal opening act assault on poor Chrissy Watkins, but it's the Gardner reveal shot that is one forever etched into the minds of horror hounds. What makes this moment particularly special is how you can watch Jaws 100 times, be fully aware each and every time as to what is about to happen, but still be somehow caught off guard in the worst possible way, as the decomposed head of Ben pops out to say hello to the unsuspecting Matt Hooper. To generation after generation, this extremely brief moment has proven to be a chilling, shocking slice of underwater action, all while likewise feeling like some sort of bizarre warm hug of comfort for those longtime Jaws fans. The grim kick of reality. Speak No Evil. Speak No Evil is one of the most numbing, impactful movies of recent years. It's really well crafted, but really depressing. And things all start so well, with Danish couple Bjorn and Louise and their daughter Agnes becoming pals with Dutch couple Patrick and Karen and their son Abel. Having met on a vacation in Italy, Patrick and Karen extend an invite to their new friends to come and stay with them in the Netherlands for a few days. Taking up this offer, our Danes are soon taken aback by certain elements of their host's hospitality. For instance, Louise is fed meat despite making it clear she's a vegetarian, and the Dutch couple are uncomfortably hands-on with their affection, and Patrick and Karen generally just do all they can to unsettle their guests. Startlingly, Bjorn and Louise's hesitancy to call out their host's awful behaviour eventually results in their deaths and the kidnapping of their daughter. Because you let me, as Patrick at one point eerily quips to Bjorn. It's revealed that Patrick and Karen operate a sinister operation of befriending parents, killing them, then cutting out their child's tongue as they pass off that child as their own, all then to repeat that process later down the line. For Bjorn and Louise, they end up stripped naked off a remote road where they are stoned to death. The shot of the two, cold and nude as they realise their fate, is a soul-sapping image that stays with you long after Speak No Evil ends. Seriously, this is a phenomenal film, but it's one you'll only ever watch once. The Doctor Will See You Now, House on Haunted Hill, 1999. No, not a reference to Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, I see you wrestling fans, but instead it's the remake of the 1959 film of the same name. Here, William Malone's House on Haunted Hill sees a group of strangers offered $1 million each if they can survive the night in the long-abandoned Vannicut Psychiatric Institute for the Criminally Insane. One such stranger is former TV star Melissa Marr, and when our group splits up, because of course they do, it's a horror film, it's Melissa who has the most startling encounter of the entire movie. When looking through a camcorder, Melissa sees a doctor and two nurses operating on some unfortunate fella. The catch is, when she looks at this scene with her own eyes, all that's there is a dusty old operating table. Taking one more look though through the camcorder, Melissa not only sees these eerie figures once again, but this time they creepily turn to stare at her before all hell breaks loose. The mask slips. Superhost. Brandon Christensen's Superhost sees travel vloggers Claire and Teddy staying at a remote property owned by Gracie Gillam's Rebecca, a quirky, slightly unhinged figure who Claire immediately sees as being the perfect driving force to bring in those likes, subscribes and shares. Hey, of course, while you're here, be sure to like, subscribe and share. With Superhost though, by its final act, Rebecca has gone full-on murderous, with Claire and Teddy both in her sights. But one of the first glimpses of her true nature comes during an encounter with a host who'd previously been given a negative review by our central couple, played by genre fave Barbara Crampton. This rival host is confronted by Rebecca and told to leave the property before the police are called, but so far so calm and composed. That is until Rebecca maniacally screams out about how she'll cut Crampton's Vera open. Here, Rebecca is almost in a trance she snaps out of with an angelic smile, showing the first chilling slip of the mask for our titular Superhost. The gut-wrenching truth. Redwood. Tom Patton's Redwood is one of the best vampire films of the past decade, focusing on Josh and Beth, a couple on a national park hiking trip after Josh has sadly been diagnosed with leukemia. As darkness creeps in for this woodland setting, it's clear that there's something out in the trees, and we soon find our lovebirds battling hordes of vampiric beasts. Finally reaching the mountaintop to seek help, Josh is shockingly dragged out into the night by a vampire. Somehow returning to the distraught, emotionally wrecked Beth though, the audience is then shown the chilling shot of Josh slyly holding a needle, which he then plunges into his girlfriend's neck to drug her, but the needle shot, when you see it in his hand, it's so ominous and creepy. And it's then revealed that Josh had been given just 6 months to live, but he'd heard of a twisted bargain plan where sacrificing a loved one on this mountain will cure him, as he then slits Beth's throat and watches her die. It's grim, it's horrible. But the kicker here though, the real kicker, is Josh was right and he actually is cured, while Beth, she's turned into one of the mindless, bloodlusting vampires who berate the wilderness. Dollface cozies up. The Strangers Pray at Night. The Strangers Pray at Night wastes absolutely no time amassing its first victims, when elderly couple Cheryl and Marv are awakened by some knocking at their trailer door. That'd be Dollface, who is already actually in the trailer by the time Cheryl gets out of bed to answer the door, and then she's killed off screen. For Marv, he remained in bed during all of this, and so of course he presumes that the figure who's made its way to bed is clearly his wife. Oh, how wrong he is, as we get the eerie shot of Dollface cozied up in bed behind Marv as he starts to piece together that, yeah, maybe something isn't quite right here. With that, The Strangers Pray at Night is off to the races. Silly Aaron. Creep, a found footage affair. Creep as director and co-writer Patrick Brice as Aaron, a struggling videographer who takes up the terminally ill Joseph's offer to document some memories for his pregnant wife and unborn child. Played by co-writer Mark Duplass, Joseph soon becomes properly sinister, stating how he sexually assaulted his wife Angela, hides Aaron's car keys, and then we get a phone call from Angela who states that Joseph is her brother and that Aaron just get out of there, mate, it's not going well, it's not good. Later deciding to take Joseph up on the offer of one final meeting so that he could apologize, Aaron heads out and waits on a lakeside beach. When the audience then, we get the extremely uncomfortable shots of Joseph arriving behind the unknowing Aaron, donning his creepy peach fuzz wolf mask and lifting an axe over Aaron's head. The pacing here, that's the key, it's fantastic, it draws out every ounce of tension. And yes, Aaron ends up butchered, you silly rabbit. The Family Business. Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers is one of the best entries in the entire Halloween franchise, and it features the twisted final shot of young Jamie Lloyd holding blood-stained scissors after stabbing her foster mother, all as the ever-great, ever-erratic Sam Loomis screams in traumatized terror. For context, Jamie is the daughter of the killed in the car accident Laurie Strode, having been adopted by the Carruthers family, and when Michael Myers hears he's got a niece, well of course he heads to Haddonfield to hunt down the poor girl. After Michael is shot down a mining shaft at the film's close, we find Darlene Carruthers running a hot bath for her foster daughter, only for the action to switch to the first-person view of a masked person stabbing Darlene. Yes, of course, that person would be Jamie Lloyd, who's creepily decked out in an outfit similar to young Michael's in the opening minutes of the first Halloween. Like, properly soul-crushing stuff upon the first watch. Bathsheba arrives, The Conjuring. Sure, the wider Conjuring universe has been soured somewhat by a few stinkers, but James Wan's first Conjuring is genuinely a modern horror classic. Set in 1971, that 2013 movie sees the Perron family move into a Rhode Island farmhouse where spooky shenanigans start to occur, causing them to seek the help of famed demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren. While there'd be teases and literal bumps in the night, the first time we properly see Bathsheba, as in the witch whose spirit haunts the family, it's an all-timer of a nerve-shredding shot. After Andrea Perron lets her sleepwalking sister Christine sleep in her bed, a banging noise comes from Andrea's wardrobe, causing Christine to sit upright in bed and let out this ominous, nervous gasp, as we then get the startling image of Bathsheba sat atop the wardrobe. Yeah, it's proper nightmare fuel, this one. Rubber Ball, I Come Bouncing Back to You. The Changeling. Not to be confused with the Angelina Jolie movie of the same name, 1980's The Changeling features an absolutely phenomenal George C. Scott as John Russell, a composer who moves to a remote Seattle mansion after the death of his wife and daughter. There, items start to move, banging noises can be heard, and taps start turning themselves on. Particularly creepy though, John sees the rubber ball of his deceased daughter roll down the stairs of this lavish house, causing the poor broken fella to take that ball to a bridge and drop it in the water below as he struggles to deal with his grief. In a disturbing turn of events, wouldn't you know it, but that rubber ball comes bouncing back down those stairs, which is quite the visual in and of itself. But even more jaw-dropping is the shot that reveals the ball is wet. Yeah, it's just properly uncomfortable stuff, but it's from a properly classic movie. Just please check The Changeling out, it's a great film. The aerial shot of terror. 30 Days of Night. Set in the sleepy Alaska town of Barrow, 2007's adaptation of Steve Niles' 30 Days of Night graphic novel finds this town thrown into hysteria when a flock of vampires arrive during the annual period where Barrow has one whole month without daylight. Some of the most intimidating, terrifying vampires ever committed to film, these beasts are meticulous, aggressive, clinical, and even have somewhat of a devilish splash of twisted playfulness as they toy with their food. And in a film full of unsettling shots, a particularly bleak one comes when these vampires fully unleash their wrath on the town, as we get a beautiful, totally chilling aerial shot of the locals trying desperately to escape their visitors, resulting in a snowy landscape full of dead bodies, bloodshed, gunshots, and just general mass panic. It's so traumatizing, but it is genuinely legitimately beautiful. Claire's Big Day. The Stylist. Jill Gavogzion's feature-length take on her own 2016 short, The Stylist stars Najara Townsend as Claire, a troubled, lonely hairstylist whose envy of others finds her drugging her clients and scalping them, then wearing those scalps and dreaming of what life could be like. When bride-to-be friend Olivia asks Claire to fix her hair for her upcoming wedding, our stylist is ecstatic and also has the rare opportunity to make some new friends. That is, of course, until Olivia's inner circle mocks Claire, which puts the wheels in motion for the stylist climax. That climax? Why, it's the unnerving shot of the bride cheerily walking down the aisle, friends and family gazing on, only for the wedding veil to be lifted and us to see a smiling, emotional, ultimately distraught and dejected Claire with the scalp of Olivia resting on her head. Yeah, seriously, The Stylist is such a smooth, smart, and no pun intended, stylish horror movie that's absolutely worth hunting down.